Now, as you heard, the Federal High Court in Abuja has struck out the charges against a set of 119 End Bad Governance protesters following public outcry that minors were among them. Now, let's bring in Arise analyst Dr. Amadi for more on this. Esula, you have this.
Well, I think quite a lot here. We're looking at the legal issues here, and some of the first, let us in on the intervention made by the government through the Attorney General of the Federation. A lot of people have actually seen that as a little bit foggy on one side, and you know, a little excited on the other hand. Let us in on some of the tasks before the Attorney General of the Federation, what his job, responsibilities are as it relates to what we just witnessed here, which is quite historic.
Well, first, I think many would say the way it was reported, politicians like to take political mileage. So, President has directed it's more politically beneficial in terms of political capital than to say administrative process goes through and the Attorney General says, I've reviewed these matters, I've instructed to enter nolli prosecute against these persons. But to say the President has ordered their release gives President a mileage. So the political language is helpful, but not suggests some kind of arbitrariness, and it's not good for rule of law perception, because you're not expecting presidents to intervene in judicial process in that direct way. Having said that, but again, everybody recognize that there are procedural error here. Some of them are charged wrongly for treason, and so I could see the Attorney General say, you know what, pull out this, cancel this charge. So the charge of treason, the Attorney General has the powers, constitutional power, unlimited power, to discontinue any prosecution. And that's what probably, in technical terms, what has happened is that he has discontinued the prosecution on good basis that wrong arraignment, the charges are not proper, or not. The government has discretion not to consider prosecution. People have talked about the 10 who are on bail. If there are similar circumstances, which they seem to be, would this cover them? But the point, the reality is that the government as a prosecutor can choose to prosecute A and not B. So there's no legal obligation for government to also extend that exemption to them. They could go ahead and prosecute the 10. Don't forget that what is driving this is politics because of perception, the outcry. Yeah. And so if we don't talk about those ones and put them in, they could go for trial, and if they meet the requirement, they could be convicted. Now, the other issue is the Attorney General's position here. I think what this brings out is the crisis of the administrative justice, criminal justice system in Nigeria, from arrest to custody to arraignment and prosecution. So if you look at 3 points, first is when there's a protest, there could be disorderly behavior, there could be crimes, but you need to carefully isolate those who committed crime. And in the country where you have no, what do you call it, cameras, where oftentimes we don't study these things and say, okay, we can identify these 3 people who went and looted that shop, and then profile them, track them, arrest them. So when you carry 200, for example, people, then you are punishing protests, not the crime. Right. Because those 200 people didn't loot, didn't all of them.
And especially when the Vice President, Kashim Shettima, says, look, based on, glaring evidence that there was destruction of, in terms of value, about 300 billion naira worth of, destruction happened. And that's enough
to justify.
But then again, how do you, yes, there's destruction that's taken place, but how do you connect this people
to this? The
Nigerian
state acts like a reckless father who is angry that they have scattered his room. Okay? And that anger is all the children, no food today. Now, some didn't participate, some just walked through the house, they didn't scatter anything. So this is justice. You have to be painstaking in isolating who did what. And that's why probably none of these prosecutions probably under strict prosecutorial process we get to conviction. Because you can't just convict somebody for being part of a protesting group. You have to have done something. You have to have shown that they agreed to go and do something. Now think about treason. I'm talking about the flag. The flag is not an offense. As bad as it is to carry Russia. Yeah. But even if it is an offense, you have to. So the first problem here is the arrest is wanton. Arrest is like indignity, anger. Angry, outraged at this protest and get these guys in. 2, is that even the prosecutors should have asserted the case, said, okay, these people can go for trial, this cannot go for trial, and the charge. And then the courts, again, there's need for judicial direction on use of bail. I mean,
and in addition to that, we should talk about the ill treatment, the malnutrition, glaring malnutrition of this, detainees. For now, let's
see what the Kaduna State Governor, what he's got to say on this.
Looking at their age and what they went through, I have no doubt in my mind a lot of people must be happy with the fact that today they are free. And as you can see, we have received them and we're taking them back home and make sure that we first look after their health and provide them with psychosocial therapy, which is very important. Having been detained for many, many months, you cannot just allow them to go home like that. We know there's a lot of psychological issues, and certainly we also have to look at their medical situation.
Yeah. Re-echoing what the minister, I'm sure you listened to the minister and entire Iwada of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Reduction, and some of what he had to say, that look, it's beyond this particular issues here. There's a need for long-term plans for these young people in a way that we will not find them back in this kind of situation. But let's talk about the treatment of these minors. In fact, all of them in detention.
I think apart from their possible criminal culpability, even if they are, the treatment itself constitutes a violation of fundamental rights. I mean, you can, looking at them, you know that they have been under inhuman treatment. And again, there's a strong protection against one of the provisions of the constitution that's not under any caveat is the right to prescription against inhuman treatment, torture. So there's no circumstance in which it is tolerated. And so I think that is, and this is one term, this is total the culture of Nigerian law enforcement. Torture. To arrest you, they break somebody's head. If you see a typical arrest, a secession in Nigeria, in a country, it may be somebody's limb and teeth will fall down in arrest. And oftentimes they even arrest relatives who have no direct link with the crime. We see that in Southeast all the time when they talk about this, dealing with the IPOB or whatever group they're dealing with. They just smash through. That, and then when they arrest people, the notion is now so entrenched that every suspect, including every possible criminal, quote unquote, has to be treated harshly. There's no longer meaning for the so-called presumption of innocence. But what that presumption means is that you have to totally think that this guy may be totally free. Yeah. And so if you have started dehumanizing, punishing the person, then he has started serving his sentence. That means he's presumed guilty until proven innocent. So I think
I know we're out of time.
Yeah, but I think it's important for
this issue of torture. Yes, quickly, just put this in perspective, because one of them spoke about waterboarding. So waterboarding as a means of torture is unbelievable. It's happening here in Nigeria. So how do we put a stop to some of this extras?
This is what led to the NSAS. Yes. And unfortunately, we didn't do anything about it. I think the Attorney General should come clear now. There should be a regulation, a law actually, a statute law, that focuses on torture, outlining liability, institutional liability, personal liability for torture. This is not going to be just, okay, go home. This should be, first there should be some kind of compensation, some kind of official position to say, this is now a threshold where people cannot cross. The police and other law enforcement should develop clear rules and guidelines on treatment of persons in detention. By the way, there's an international corpus of law, international law on how to treat persons in detention.
Is Nigeria not signatory
Nigeria is a good boy in signing up, but you see, you need to get back to structures, institutions, and rules to, support those you sign. So I think that there should be accountability. And again, lawyers should start litigating on prison conditions. I did my first job as a lawyer was to secure somebody who was under death row and get them off, because so much violation happens in prison. Let's take this very clear. Even sentence, conviction, is not equals to torture. Custodial term is that you stay in prison. It does not therefore mean that the prisoner has lost his rights as a citizen and therefore should be tortured. So torture should be focused on, and the police has basically, the idea is that once you're a suspect, you're a criminal. And the only way to do a criminal is to cut their
Dr.
lips
Sam
and
Amadi.
brutalize
I would
them.
like to thank you for your time, as always. We do hope we'll follow through on this one.